Hello, and welcome to the stage of the Flat Rock Playhouse, the State Theater of North Carolina, located here in the historic village of Flat Rock. I'm Doug Llewellyn, and I'm surrounded here by the world of Eva Duarte Peron, who, as you may recall, rose from meager beginnings in a small town to become the most popular and most powerful woman in the history of Argentina. At the age of 26, she married a military colonel named Juan Peron, and 2 years later, he was elected president of Argentina. That made Eva the first lady of the land. Unfortunately, 6 short years later, she fell ill from cancer and died at the young age of just 33. She had become so popular, she was given a state funeral, something normally reserved for heads of state. It was, without question, one of the most elaborate funerals ever staged anywhere. The outpouring of grief was clear evidence of the way this woman was worshipped by the masses of working-class Argentine people. It is her amazing story that became the basis for one of the most successful theatrical musical productions of the last 50 years, Evita, with music by Andrew Lloyd Webber and lyrics by Tim Rice. The show was a major hit when it opened in London in 1978, and then 2 years later when it came to Broadway, it won 6 Tonys, including Best Musical of the Year. In the intervening years, it has been presented on stages literally around the world, including a revival on Broadway just last year. And now, this much heralded musical has come here to the Flat Rock Playhouse as the first in a super summer series of legendary Broadway musicals. This staging of Evita promises to be truly exceptional. It features a cast of seasoned Broadway and New York performers who, along with the Playhouse apprentices and students from the Playhouse Youth Theater, form a cast that totals 35 people who at one point are all on stage at the same time. It is one of the largest casts ever assembled for a production here at the Flat Rock Playhouse. In the next 30 minutes, we'll take you behind the scenes to meet the extraordinary team of talents assembled to make this production of Evita a very memorable theatrical experience. We'll begin our journey right after this message from our sponsor, Morris Broadband. To mount this production of Evita here at the Flat Rock Playhouse requires a director with unique talents and a special vision for this particular production. The producing artistic director of the Playhouse, Vincent Marini, selected Richard Hynes, whose background includes choreographing a wide range of musicals at theaters all across the country and associate directing the Broadway musicals Newsies and Jekyll and Hyde. For this production, he is not only the director, he is also the choreographer.
The thing that's interesting about this show is that there is no spoken text. The entire show is musicalized. So in essence, it's like an opera. So for me to come on board, I felt very strongly that the show needed to have a really strong physical movement life to it. So we never felt like we were just in a scene, that we really see the transition from the lower class to her being in Buenos Aires, to her meeting the aristocrats, to the army, and then her, of course, going into this power, position of power. So it's really important to me. What I'm trying to do is find a very earthy approach earlier on when we meet her, and then slowly with our actress Anna, who's portraying the role of Eva, you just see her physical life completely change. And so as a choreographer, that was really thrilling to me to approach my directing with that movement sensibility to it.
As both the director and choreographer of Evita, his first task was to help select the cast for the show, which they did in New York.
The audition process for us for Evita was about a week long, and we saw hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people. And we got some really top-notch performers coming out that were very interested in coming to this theater just because of the reputation it has, but also the show is so incredibly iconic. I think every woman at one point in her life wants to play the role of Eva Peron. And so we saw probably about 25 serious contenders for the role, and we slowly just made it smaller and smaller and smaller, and we ended up with Anna, who's absolutely fantastic. She comes to us straight from the Broadway company of Wicked, where she was covering Elphaba. And what I found so fascinating about her audition was the first thing she did for me was Buenos Aires, and she really captured the youth of the character. And then right after that, we did Don't Cry for Me, Argentina, and she immediately snapped into this woman of power. I saw her stance, her physicality, everything change. And it was just fascinating. And her voice is unbelievable.
Don't cry for me, Argentina. The truth is I never left you. All through my wild days, my mad existence, I kept my promise. Don't keep your distance.
But I have to say what really impressed me and what was so important to me is that, we have to get from meeting her at 15 to seeing her so incredibly ill at 33 and passing away. It's a very large journey for any actress to make and not make us feel like we're looking at the same thing through the whole 2 hours of the show. And so the fact that she was able to do that for me that quickly in the audition process, I knew that we were going to be in very good hands to have her, leading our show.
Starring as Eva Peron, or Evita as she was often called, is Philadelphia native Anna Eilensfeld, who was thrilled to get the part because it's based on the story of a real person.
I got really nerdily excited about that because there's so much information and there's so many different sides as to who she is and what she is, even how old she is in certain moments. There's a lot of mystery about her, and there's a lot of drama about her life. So for me, I was very excited. I got my Ava journal immediately. I started watching documentaries first because I didn't have access to any sort of books or anything yet. And just looking at pictures and images because she was such a iconic figure. What she wore, how she looked, even just how she held herself are still iconic things today in the world at large. So that was the stuff I started looking at. And then from there, I started reading up a little bit on her actual history, what she did, her actual timeline. So I think for me, my challenge with Ava is to show why you loved her and to justify her actions, why she did what she did. And sometimes that's really hard with the music and the text because it exposes all of her flaws. But deep down, she just wanted to help her people. And she just did it in her own way. I love it. It's a dream role. It's, Patti LuPone did it, famously, originally. I watched clips of her on YouTube in high school doing it and just being amazed at what the music and the staging and her power could do with this story. And so I've always wanted to play this role. It's absolutely a treat to do it. And I love doing it here. We have an amazing cast, a really supportive climate, which is just what you need to be artistic and take risks and challenge yourself in ways that maybe you didn't think you could. Coming to this, had no idea I'd be able to actually dance Buenos Aires and sing it. And just with the inspiration of the people around me, it's been totally possible and very exciting, though it's exhausting.
Need a moment's rest. Give your lover the very best. Real eider down and silence.
It's a big, big challenge. And her days for rehearsal are, out of everyone in our show, are the longest because she's in almost every moment. I'd say she's in about 85% of our show. So, and she's building her stamina up. The score is not any easy score to sing. So she's finding that balance of how to get through the material and still deliver the moments that we need her to deliver, and also protect herself, and also just to give us some color in the show so we don't get the same thing for 2 hours. But yes, I'm a huge fan of hers.
Continuing our look at the making of Evita, we focus next on the character Juan Peron, the president of Argentina. And in this case, the producers were very fortunate to have Ron Brown show up at the auditions because he is very familiar with this character.
This is actually the 9th production of Evita that I've done. It's the 6th time I've played Peron. The other 3 times I was the understudy for Peron and was just in the ensemble. And by the way, the ensemble of this show is one of my favorite ensembles to be in, because they have so much to do. They play so many different characters throughout the whole course of the play that it's really a lot of fun just to even be any member of the ensemble in this show. It's probably one of the best shows as far as that goes. But getting back to it, doing Peron so many times, but each time with a different Ava, with a different Che, with just a different group of people, you're always rediscovering it. And also every time with a different director. I'm really looking forward to working with Hynes on this one, because already I'm seeing he has a completely new vision. I don't want to say completely different, but he has a new vision. And that challenges me to open up my ideas.
Please go on! You enthrall me. I can understand you perfectly, and I like what I hear, what I see, and knowing me, I would be good for you too.
I'm not talking of a hurried night, a frantic tumble and a shy goodbye, creeping home before it gets too light. That's not the reason that I caught your eye, which has to imply I'd be good for you. I'd be surprisingly good for you.
Coming up next, you'll meet the man who plays Che. He's the one who sings that very familiar, "Oh, what a circus." You'll also meet the sensational team of dancers who have come from Broadway to the mountains to help bring this production of Evita to life here on the Playhouse stage. The other major character in Evita is named Che Guevara. Interestingly, this is not the same Che Guevara who was involved in the Cuban Revolution of the 1950s. It's simply a character created by the writer of the musical's book, Tim Rice, to serve as a narrator and help guide the audience through Eva's story. Interestingly, he is played by not only a Broadway veteran who appeared recently in the Lincoln Center production of South Pacific, he's also a Playhouse veteran who last year appeared here in Zelda, An American Love Story. His name is Charlie Brady.
Che is a very interesting character to play because he's not the linear convention of what a character normally is. You know, he talks to the audience, he has direct address to the audience, more often than not. He doesn't often have scenes and dialogue with characters within the realm of what the show is. So in that, you know, you have to open up to different ways of thinking about how you're going to portray somebody like that, you know, and how you're going to keep the audience invested in what you're going through as a character when you're breaking that fourth wall.
What I love that he brings to our Che is a bit more sexiness to it. We wanted him to be a little bit more younger and edgier, and even though he still has the quintessential Che look, he's definitely more of the people. You know, he's the way he is in our show. He's in and out, he's this worker. We didn't want him to sort of be just on the outside the whole time. So we've really found a way that he is just being weaved in and out of our story. And his energy is fantastic. And it's a perfect counter to Anna and Ron, where he sort of brings that earthiness, that rawness, and that sex to it.
She had her moments, she had some style. The best show in town was the crowd outside the Casa Rosada crying, "Eva, Peron!" But that's all gone now. As soon as the smoke from the funeral clears, we're all gonna see and how she did nothing for years. Salve Regina, Mater Misericordiae, Vita dolceno estes nostra, salve, salve Regina, Ate clama.
What's fascinating about our production of Evita was when we were doing the auditions in New York for the dancers, we were able to assemble an incredible group of people to come out here with some amazing credentials. And I am beyond thrilled to have the opportunity to work with these dancers. And in no particular order, we have Corey, who just did the tour of The Color Purple. We have Jen, who was just here last year working on Zelda, and she was a performer in that as well. We have Fred, who was a dancer for Celine Dion and then worked with Cirque du Soleil. We have Christopher, who was just in the TV show Smash. And we have Michael, who just did the revival of West Side Story on Broadway. And we have Matthew, who just did Follies on Broadway and just finished A Christmas Story, the musical on Broadway. I'm beyond thrilled, speechless. The fact, with all of them in the room, and then when we made all the offers, I thought, well, surely I won't get all those dancers. And they all said yes, and they are dancing. They're thrilling to watch.
There's never been a lady loved as much as Eva Peron.
I'm amazed every time we do rehearsals. I'm like, wow. I mean, some of these dancers I've admired from afar in New York City. So it's just been very cool to be in an intimate space with them and work with them because they are all such incredible dancers.
It's a difficult show to do because the dancing is hard stuff. We're dancing from a visceral place as Argentinians do. And to sing on top of that, this difficult score, melding the two together is really, really hard to do.
The thing that makes it the most difficult is not necessarily the dance, but the vocals, because the music is so difficult.
First of all, the score is so gorgeous, and I've not quite been in a musical with such complexity in the musical department. So it's great in that aspect. But Ricky Hynes and Jennifer Jankashay are doing such a wonderful job. I love the movement that they're bringing to the show. I think it's going to be a great hit.
In addition to all the great performers, which include 16 Playhouse apprentices and 16 children from the Playhouse Youth Theater program, the staging of Evita would not have been possible without the awesome talents of the Playhouse's scenic design team, which is headed by Dennis Malden, who interestingly began as an apprentice himself here 46 years ago.
I think like the general feeling should be for the stage. They don't really tell you what the set should be. It's a fine line, but they don't. They tell you, I'm looking for this, or I want it to feel like this, something that's a little more sensory, I guess is the word. And then it's my job to kind of take those words and translate them into some visual, concrete thing. And I like to think that I'm able to do that most of the time. The goal is to find a way to tell the story and to let the visual world begin to reflect what's going on in the music and what's going on in the story. And Evita is a good example of that. I have a stage that the director wanted to feel was kind of confined and closed in and represented a specific part of Argentina or a part of the world. And he didn't want it to be like a theater piece where it was open to the wings and you had black curtains that made it seem very spacious. So there are a lot of walls and columns and closed in abilities and shutters that can close in and change the shape of the stage. And so sometimes you want intimate things that close in the space and use more architecture around the actors, and sometimes you want there to be a big movement of that scenery and it opens up into a vista that's very large or spacious, and you accommodate sometimes two singers singing a duet that's intimate and beautiful, and sometimes you have all 30 people on stage having to be on stage and to talk. And in Evita you have characters like Che, who is sort of a narrator and comments on the action. And you have to find a place for him to be where he isn't always right in the middle of the action, but he's still on stage looking at it. And so our stage kind of lends itself to that. We have these side stages on the apron, and there's a place for him to be in my design where he's kind of an outsider looking in. There are places that Eva Peron can be when she's, doing a radio show by herself, but it's not in the main stage where everything else is going on. So I was able to use the space pretty judiciously and still accomplish part of what the story wanted you to accomplish.
Coming up next, a look at what's still to come in this amazing Super Summer series of legendary Broadway musicals. As we pointed out, this is a big summer for musicals here at the Playhouse. In fact, the schedule includes 3 of the biggest and most successful musicals in the history of Broadway. Beginning with Evita, which is playing now through June 30th. It's going to be followed next by the much anticipated production of Les Miserables. And then that'll be followed by another Andrew Lloyd Webber super hit, Cats. To learn more about this extraordinary and ambitious schedule, we sat down with a man who actually picked the shows and assembled the schedule. He is the producing artistic director of the Playhouse, Vincent Marini.
Well, I feel really good about the 2013 season. I mean, I feel like one of the things that I think is very important is that the artistic director believes in all of the projects that are being put onto the stage. And that even if we're doing something because we do think it will sell tickets, we don't program that unless we believe in the project. And I think that if you look at the shows that we've programmed, not just Evita, Les Mis, and Cats, but also shows like Death Trap and the Lost Highway Project, the Hank Williams Project, the Three Musketeers, and the new Three Musketeers version, all of that stuff I think are projects that are really going to get the audience here and also the audience from out of town excited about what the Playhouse can offer.
Talk to me a little bit about Les Miserables. What do you see
for
that?
Well, we had one of our first production meetings recently, and when we sat down and looked at the show, we all sat there and sort of smiled at one another and said, well, if you don't enjoy doing this show, you don't enjoy being involved with theater. Because it really is like an opera. And it's like one of the great musical theater operas that have ever been written. And for a lot of people that are my age especially, that was kind of their introduction to Broadway. Either Les Mis or Phantom of the Opera, those mid-'80s shows that came out that sort of revolutionized Broadway. I really truly believe that the experience of seeing Les Mis on our stage is going to be completely unique, and that people that have seen the movie or that have seen the show, I think they're going to get a very different experience coming to Flat Rock Playhouse. And I can also say that I truly believe we have probably the best collection of singers we've ever had for any show that I've been involved with at the Playhouse for this production of Les Miserables. My whole interest in Cats specifically was doing it downtown. So I probably wouldn't have chosen Cats for the main stage because I don't know what we could do that would be substantially different than what's been done before. But doing it downtown where the Cats will be right on top of the audience, around the audience, over the audience, that to me is an interesting new perspective on the show. So I think by putting the performers and the audience sort of within the same working space so that the audience feels like they're in the world that the Cats are in, I think that's going to be a whole new thing.
He's not the only one who's excited. Virtually everyone here at the Playhouse is really turned on by all these upcoming musical productions, including Evita, of course, which is playing now through June 30th. We certainly hope you've enjoyed this look behind the scenes at all of the activity going on here at the Playhouse. There is no question, big things are happening. It really is quite exciting. I'm Doug Llewellyn. Thank you so much for joining us, and thanks also to our sponsor, Morris Broadband, for making this show possible. We'll see you at the show.